I'm a big fan of team engagement activities because if you find a better way to collaborate and most of all communicate with each other, automatically productivity, efficiency, effectiveness, they come naturally, right? On top, of course, you have to work on the performance of people, etc. But that's the first part, bonding with each other. And I usually work and I usually use a team building activity that is based on real colors, which is a workshop that I usually run for 4 hours. And it's based on the natural traits that people have in them.
Hey everyone, it's Amy Lynn Durham, and you're listening to Create Magic at Work. Create Magic at Work is on a mission to equip senior leaders with tools they need to be a true quantum leader and actually understand what that means. Improve employee engagement, retain top talent, and transform your workplace culture to have less drama and stress. So let's start making magic. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Create Magic at Work. Today, our guest is Cinzia Beretta. She's a multicultural global leader living in Italy, so we're bringing you an Italian vibe today. She's passionate about cultures, languages, inclusiveness, and building meaningful human connections across the globe. Her energy comes from leading and working with senior leaders, teams, and individuals, enabling them to thrive, unleash their potential, and stay engaged with experiential learning, transformative growth programs, coaching, and culture communication. That's been a big theme for season 5 is we've been talking a lot about multicultural perspectives and also cultural intelligence. So right in theme with what we've been talking about in season 5. She has spent her 20-year career working in a variety of communication areas, focusing in particular on culture and employee engagement. So all of you out there listening that want some more tips on how to engage your teams, perk your ears up and stay tuned. We're going to get into some of that. And more recently on leadership development in a big multinational company. On top of her communication activities, she currently leads multi-language learning, growth, and coaching programs for emerging leaders to accelerate their transformative growth in international environments and retain top talents during moments of change. She believes coaching and emotional intelligence are key to help leaders and people in general connect with other human beings in an authentic way and pursue a fulfilled, balanced, and ultimately happy life. So, Cinzia, welcome to Create Magic at Work.
Thank you, Amy, and hello, everybody, to all our listeners. Thank you for inviting me and being here with you. Looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, I am too. So tell us, did I leave anything out, or is there anything else you want everyone to know about you?
Well, you summarized it well. Thank you for the great introduction. You touched the key points about me and my passions and how I like to make connections and to build connections across the world and help people thrive and grow. So you summarized it well.
Great. Can you tell us, I think what really struck me and why I said, yes, come be a guest on the Create Magic at Work podcast was in our casual conversation when we met virtually, we were talking about the different viewpoints around the world. And that really resonates with one of the skills in spiritual intelligence, which is one of the main philosophies and tools that of Create Magic at Work, which is awareness of others' worldviews. And what's my level on that? And when I'm aware of others' worldviews, and that maybe, people are looking through the world from a different lens than I am, that actually can help me be more successful, that can help me connect more, that can help me be more creative. So I'd like to hear your take on this cultural intelligence and this multicultural lens we can tap into when we're working in leadership.
Yeah, that's a topic that is absolutely near and dear to my heart. I believe that teams that have different backgrounds, that come from different places around the world, that have different cultures, they make a team richer in terms of engagement, in terms of ideas, in terms of creativity, because as you said, every person has their own view. And what is meaningful in one culture is less meaningful than in another. And especially in communication, for example, we need to be mindful of what something that is absolutely normal, so to say, in North American culture might be more challenging in others. I think what is interesting, though, regardless of all the differences in terms of cultural background, what I've noticed over the years, and especially running leadership development programs for emerging leaders, that people realize at a certain point that we are all human beings. And we all have the same needs of belonging, the same needs of feeling loved. So the basic needs that are there, that are touching our emotions, our inner self, are the same across the world. And although we have different cultures, just to give you an example, usually in the first week of the leadership program I run, I have a session, some sessions on communicating across cultures and engaging across cultures. And I bring in leaders from different backgrounds. And really, I always wait for the end of the week to see the reaction of the group of people that are the participants. And this is the fourth year I'm running this program, and they always have the same reaction, which is, but in the end, we're not so much different. And we're speaking of people from Latin America to Indonesia, from South Africa to Canada, from UK to Italy. So it's really that understanding that we are much more similar than we think is always so amazing for me, and gives me hope also for the future, and for the fact that I'm making a small impact in their lives, making them understand these important things.
Yeah. I think that really is where you see the magic, is when you gather people together, whether it's virtually, whether it's in person, and you tap into the connection piece where one person is looking at the other person that may have had some prejudgments going in, and then they hear sharing or they hear them speak and they're like, oh, just like me, that
Exactly.
that person is going through something. I've been using that a lot, the just like me, they're just trying to get through the day, or just like me, they're trying to experience joy. And then it taps into our inner wisdom and compassion. And with spiritual intelligence, that would be our higher self. And we start operating from that space more. It's very
Exactly.
powerful and
Yeah.
courageous that you do that work. So thank you for that.
Well,
We yeah.
if I may add one point, I think what's really interesting is that people are open to explore, naturally open to explore if other things, if they join these types of programs, and they are open to explore growth internally. And what I always tell people from all over the world is, if you don't know something about another culture, there is no shame in asking to the other person, tell me more about that. Is it this appropriate in your culture? Is something that is offending you? There is no right or wrong answer, in the sense that for me it's legitimate to ask. It's impossible to know everything about anything, literally, right? Even if you start learning about different cultures, I'm certified with GlobeSmart, which is one of those tools that helps you give an intercultural competency. And although there are a lot of resources you can read, that it's literally impossible to know all the cultures of the world. So asking is what leads us to understanding, I think.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I mean, asking and maybe tapping into the four universal communication principles that are one of the main, you know, it's the main value that I operate from with Create Magic at Work. Is one of them is I pay attention to what has heart and meaning. I tell the truth without blame and judgment. And then if you add curiosity to that with others and approach situations in that way, that can be really
Yes.
impactful and connecting. In regards to, we talked a little bit about the difference between when we were off the recording, but I want to talk about it now. We talked about some of the differences between being assertive and being aggressive in communication. One thing that I find with clients, when we start working on the making wise and compassionate decision skill, when we start talking about it, when maybe they start skill building in that area, is there tends to be a hard time where they have a difficult time, and it's a practice, right, that we all have to work through, where there's a fine line between assertiveness that drives productivity and slipping into crossing the line into aggression, because some of us have never really dabbled in boundary setting before. So then when we start like, I'm going to be assertive, sometimes we accidentally cross the line into aggression because we're practicing. I'd love to hear your feedback on that, and maybe a tip, if you have one, on how we can, when we're practicing setting boundaries with others and communicating, how can we not slip into that fine line moving from assertive to aggressive?
That's a very good question. Well, there are a couple of things that come to mind. Well, first, just to make sure we are all on the same page in terms of being assertive, it means really expressing your needs, your desires, your
Love that.
thoughts, while respecting the desire and thoughts of others. So it doesn't mean that you're ignoring the thoughts of others. You are even instead acknowledging the thoughts of others, the emotions of others, their needs, but you also express yours. And this is the balance between the empathy and the high empathy, high interpersonal relationships. So, high focus on building strong and solid relationships, putting yourself in the shoes of others, but also being able to maintain a respect for yourself and your own needs, and don't crush yourself just because you feel the need to support others, which is a very valuable, let's say, intent. But it's also important to take care of ourselves in terms of respecting who we are internally, and if we are doing something that is aligned with what we are, with our values, with our purpose, right? So this is the first point. So I think aggressiveness would fall more into the win, I win, you lose a solution, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead, the assertiveness is more a win-win solution, right? Of trying to find a balance. But there are one interesting thing that I would say is that I found in my life in general, I work and mainly this is a comment more for work. Being assertive is, for me, comes more naturally if I've built a solid relationship with someone, and if I've built a trusted relationship with someone. And so I start from the assumption, and I hope the other person start from the assumption that there is good intent on my side, on their side. So give grace to yourself and to the other, that we are starting from good intentions. So that is one point. The other point that I would say, and it's connected to the multicultural lenses that we had before, in some cultures, being assertive is actually considered a little bit aggressive. Like being assertive is normal in North American culture, in Europe, but for example, in some Asian countries, not all of them, but some of them, being assertive can be perceived a little bit more towards the aggressiveness, not the extreme really, but more like, okay, I'm trying to make my point, I want really to stand out here. And that's because in those countries, the focus on building the community, building the relationships in some of the Asian countries, as I said, not all of them, is the primary focus. So the group and the relationship goes before
Mm-hmm.
expressing your own needs and the desires. So my tip is really, once again, is building solid and trusted relationships based on transparency, based on mutual understanding. That's the basic for me. Connecting with people, things will come more naturally.
Yeah. That's interesting that you mention cultures where the group comes before the individual. with spiritual intelligence and the SQ21, which is the 21 skills that I'm certified to coach in for spiritual intelligence, the first two quadrants are interchangeable because it accounts for cultures that put community first over individual. So that's the first time that anybody has really touched on that so far on the podcast. So thank you for sharing that, because I think that's an important acknowledgement, because if you're looking at the quantum leader skills and these elevated leader skills sets that you can work skill build in, the first quadrant is kind of individually focused. Am I aware of my own worldview? Am I aware of my life purpose? Am I aware of my values? Am I living in alignment? Can I separate my ego from my higher self? Second quadrant of skills is like, am I aware of other people's worldviews, which is what we're talking about today, right? Am I aware of the interconnectedness of all of life? And it's not linear. It's not like quadrant one, quadrant two. It's like both can be interchangeable to account for cultures that do. How did you put it? I'm saying that put community first, but what was the way that you framed it?
Building the relationship and looking at the team as a whole first,
Right.
and what's good for the team, right?
Yeah.
Still, but I also have to say that on top of the country culture, you have your own specific culture of your family. But then if you are in a global multinational, you also have a company culture.
Yeah.
So at some point, for example, if you think about big players in the market where they have people from all over the world, you have to try to adjust the way you are to fit in a culture that is a company culture, right? So it's a multiple levels, and at some point it becomes the norm to be assertive, for example, in a multinational company, and it's also accepted from other Asian cultures. So it's much more complex than we think, because if you're just thinking about you as a person in your own country, living your life without working, ideally, just living there, it's obviously ideal. It's not a reality, but it's different. You're like in a silos, you're like in a bubble, and that's not where we are living in today. We're not living in a bubble, even with the pandemic and the connections that we have built through social media, through platforms like Zoom, like others that we are using naturally and virtually. The world is much more connected, and it's literally impossible to be in a bubble and not be aware of others, right? So I think it's also a matter of respect. Like I respect my neighbor, I respect all others, right?
Yeah, exactly. I want to go back to something you said. We just said about putting the team first, or I'm interested in exploring that, and I can't let you go any further on this podcast without sharing some fun tips with the listeners, because you do a lot of company workshops and team builds, and that is all what the entire Create Magic at Work book is about, is different activities that leaders can do. So I want you to share what maybe is one of the most connecting activities that someone can do, like a quick tip, and maybe something to stay away from that might not be as beneficial when we're connecting for productivity and team engagement.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big fan of team engagement activities, because if you find a better way to collaborate and most of all communicate with each other, automatically productivity, efficiency, effectiveness, they come naturally, right? On top, of course, you have to work on the performance of people, etc. But that's the first part, bonding with each other. And I usually work, and I usually use a team building activity that is based on real colors, which is a workshop that I usually run for 4 hours. And it's based on the natural traits that people have in them. So we're not speaking of leadership traits, we're speaking of natural traits. So let's think about a puppet, a lion, a puppet that you move from the savannah to your house. It grows, becomes, I don't know, 10 years old, but still remains a lion. that's the story, the whole core of the concepts, the fact that we have some natural traits that we will still have everywhere we go, in a company, outside, etc. So I run this team building activity, which emphasize different ways people reach their goals, and it's okay. It's totally okay. So people who are more analytical oriented, maybe they need 3 weeks to work on a project. Those who work well under pressure, they just need 3 days, and they get to the same results, same exact results, but with 2 different ways. And when I run this workshop, it's fun because people do realize that, oh, my colleagues are different, and maybe that person is not responding to me, not because he or she doesn't want to, it's just because she just wait for the last minute because it's giving her or him this energy, this final sprint to work better. So this is a fun workshop because you can understand really what's the motivator behind the behaviors of people, why a person does like making lists and crossing off, okay, done. What's the feeling that you get from that? And maybe another person get the same satisfaction in, I don't know, starting a new project where they have no competence and they are risk oriented and they have the same feeling of satisfaction and reward. So 2 different things, but the outcome on the person is the same. So it's really, this is one of the most fun workshops that I usually run because it's really helping people understand why we react in a certain way and why we do see things in a certain way. So this is the fun part. The second part of the question is something that I don't like. Well, I don't like sessions or trainings where there is only one-way communication. So when I run learning events or facilitate session with hundreds of people, I always have the chat active because I want people to be there, to be connected. So for me, one-way communication in these types of events, learning opportunities, engagement opportunities, doesn't work. I mean, you need to have a moment where people are engaged, because as adults, we learn by doing things. 70% of the time spent in learning for us is learning by doing. 10% is just the classical class learning, like the classical training. And 20% is connections with others, learning from others, from the experience of other leaders. So this classical 70, 10, and 20 is the percentage that all in the leadership and development world understand, because it's how we as adults learn and get engaged. So hopefully I answered to your question.
You did. The first part that when you were sharing the tool that you use really taps into understanding that your path to completion of a project, I'm just using this as an example, may not be the same path as my completion to a project. However, if we both get there, that's what counts. And that's a leader has to have that inner wisdom to know my way is not the only way. And I understand your path may be a little bit different, but as long as we get there, that's what matters.
Yes.
And that's a great reminder. And then the other thing on the listen only mode, that's what I was thinking of when you were sharing, like having activities where everyone's in a listen only mode. I understand if there's company statements or something that needs to, be information that needs to be given, that sometimes is a listen only mode type situation. However, there's nothing, I completely agree with you, nothing beats the interaction that you can have with others real time when they show up for these workshops and these trainings that you and I both do. Nothing compares to having that back and forth connection and the interaction, whether it's virtual or in person. So thank you for sharing that.
Especially if you have just one person sharing something, that's really where the engagement drops. If you have, like in the podcast, where you have a dialogue, that's instead a scenario where you learn from others, because there is a dialogue, there is an exchange of ideas, right? And also in podcast, if they are posted on social media, you can also comment. So, but I'm thinking about For example, I remember when I was in college 20 plus years ago, a classical, not in Italy, this is what happened. But maybe some professors were different than others, but a classical person saying, okay, this is the lecture for today, blah, 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 and no interactions. And I'm thinking now how much we could do there as well. And I'm not saying maybe today things are different at university. I mean, I haven't been there in 20 years, so I don't
Same.
know.
I can't really comment on that. Although I do a lot of educational training with, my certifications and stuff for Create Magic at Work, but that's all virtual. Cinzia, before we get to pulling a card for everyone, I would like you to share with everyone what you feel a quantum leader is from your multicultural global lens.
I love this question because it gives me the opportunity to share something really important to me. And so for me, a quantum leader is a leader that looks at the person, whoever is in front of them, as a whole, not just the person in that moment, the person at work, the person outside of work, but looking at the person as a whole with their values, their purpose, their inner leader that is driving their decisions, is making their decision and choices resonant with where they want to go. So looking at the person as a whole and listening what's not said, because it's easy to listen what's being said. It's easy also to look at the body language, but there are things that are not said, things that you perceive in the air, but something, there's something off. And listening is very important. Third point for me is vulnerability. Leading by example and showing that being vulnerable, it's okay, because it means we are all human beings and we are all vulnerable in one way or another. We all have our spots where there are soft spots, and it's okay. It's okay to be vulnerable. It doesn't make us any less worth of anything. So these are my key takeaways.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. All right, everyone, the time has come to pull a card meant for you today. As you're listening, this is a message to you from the Journal Prompt card deck for Create Magic at Work. It's a deck of 33 cards that gives you messages for your work and for your career and coaching questions that you can journal about. So we're going to pull a card today and see what we get and ask Cinzia a question from that card. Oh, okay. Well, I'm liking what we got today. We got rest.
Oh, I can't read very well here. Oh, rest.
That's okay.
Nice.
Yeah, we got rest. So for anybody listening, this is a call from the universe saying we need to take a moment and give ourselves permission to rest. So the affirmation is, I give myself permission to rest. And I think that's really important because we often don't give ourselves permission to rest, right? So I give myself permission to rest. Cinzia, question to you is, where have you been pushing in your life instead of flowing?
Oh, that's a very good question. I might take a whole other podcast, but pushing, well, I like to learn all the time. I'm a lifelong learner, and I always push myself to do new things, to explore new things. And sometimes I really have this desire to learn and grow, and I always have the bar high for myself. And I realize that sometimes I just need to go with the flow and just enjoy what I got so far, because I am enough. And that's, I think, is an important message for many, many people. You are enough, and not,
I love that.
That's okay where you are now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that vulnerable answer. One of the pushing and flowing, it's really been a theme lately for a lot of people. I think it's just kind of in the energy consciousness right now. How do skill 21 in spiritual intelligence is, how do I align with the ebb and flow of life? And where am I at with that? And can I discern between with obstacles, whether they are a distraction, whether they are calling me to move forward, or whether they are calling me to pause. And I think you illustrated that beautifully in that way. So yeah. Cinzia, thank you so much for being a guest on Create Magic at Work. How can people connect with you if they want to learn more about what you do, or just say hi or share some thoughts with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn, so hopefully you will add the LinkedIn link when you post the podcast. You can reach out to me, send me a message. I'll be happy to connect. And thank you for having me today, for having this conversation, wonderful and lovely conversation, Amy.
Yeah, thank you so much for being a guest and for sending some magic to everyone. And we absolutely will have your LinkedIn in the show notes. So everyone, don't forget to check those out and connect with Cinzia and also myself. So thank you so much, Cinzia.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Hey everyone, Amy here. I am so excited to share this news with you. If you've been a longtime listener of the podcast, or even if you're new, you probably know that I weave spiritual intelligence through all of the episodes of Create Magic at Work. And we often talk about where you are at with making wise and compassionate decisions, what it looks like to be a wise and effective change agent. How do I put my ego aside and operate from my higher self? And if you've ever been curious as to what level you're sitting at in your life in those skills, I have some great news for you. I have loaded the SQ21 assessment on the Create Magic at Work website. This is something that only my private clients have access to in a coaching partnership with me. However, I have decided to give everyone access to the SQ21 assessment at a generous price, a small fee. You can take the assessment at createmagicatwork.net/shop, and you will get a printout that you can take with you the rest of your life as to where you're sitting, what level you're sitting at in the 21 skills of spiritual intelligence. This is an amazing opportunity. I encourage you to take advantage of it. Again, if you've ever been listening to all of the past episodes like, I wonder where I sit at making wise and compassionate decisions, or I wonder where I sit at being able to access my higher self, explore that curiosity and go to the website and take the assessment. I will also have that link dropped in the show notes so it's easily accessible to you here after the episode. And again, if you have any questions or if you just want to have a chat with me, I'm always available for a complimentary 30-minute coffee chat, so you can explore that as well. But get over to the website, take that assessment, and give yourself the gift of something that you can take with you for the rest of your life. Sending magic to you.